On the 16th of April 2009, France made an ambitious promise to open Notre-Dame de Paris for the 2024 Olympic Games. Indeed, announced for December 8, 2024, there's every reason to believe that the building site won't be delivered on time. And yet, with a year to go before inauguration, this colossal project has never progressed so quickly. This autumn, considerable progress has been made, marking a major turning point for the site. So, despite the scale of the task ahead, are we on target to meet our objectives? To find out, we need to know how the work is progressing. That's why we're going to find out how things stand chronologically over the months of September, October, and November. We'll do this in 3 main parts. We'll start with the interior, then the progress of the walls, and finally, we'll finish with the framework. Over the past 3 months, the project to rebuild Notre-Dame to its former glory has been transformed from every angle. Following the accidental death of Army General Jean-Louis Georgelin, who was in charge of restoring Notre-Dame de Paris Cathedral, we are now joined by Philippe Jost, his successor, to explore the site. The worksite has been progressing under his direction since September 9th. Prior to his appointment, he had been Deputy Managing Director for the previous 2009 years. We begin the video on September 14th, which marks the completion of the restoration of the choir vaults. Indeed, they have been restored. To achieve this, the masons had to start by cleaning the vaults, perched on scaffolding over 30 meters high. Next, they applied a patina to the walls. This mixture is made from lime and pigments. Not only does it prevent insects from developing on the surface of the stones or in the joints, it also harmonizes the colors to make the vaults uniform. Finally, the masons are replaced by paint restorers. The restorers paint the final touch to the choir vaults in a color identical to the original. Once these 3 stages have been completed, the scaffolders gradually lower the scaffolding to allow the restorers access to the parts it was masking. Now, 2 days later, in the small town of Aguetmau, reputed to be the chair capital of the world, we discover the manufacture of 500 new chairs in a family-run business. As you can see, traditional chairs will now give way to more restrained designs. These clean line models will be made from solid chain. The 17 employees of the carpenter's workshop should be able to complete production by October 2024. Continuing the trend of discovering the new furniture, on October 8th, in the small village of Diolofi, in the Drôme region of France, we discovered the future liturgical furniture in actual size. In fact, it's thanks to wax models that we can see the furniture, which will be made of bronze. Created by designer Guillaume Bardet and chosen for its noble simplicity by the bishop, 6 pieces of furniture have been selected. There will be a new hotel, an ambo, a baptistery, the bishop's chair and its associated seat, and finally a tabernacle. According to the latest information, these models are undergoing their final adjustments. They will then be sent to a foundry in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, which will design the molds from which the furniture will be definitively crafted. On October 22nd, the scaffolding in the nave continues to be dismantled, gradually revealing the restored nave. A few days before the famous Halloween festivities, on October 29th, we discovered the Saint-Martin Chapel, which has regained all its colors on its keystones, walls and arches, as in many other parts of the cathedral. On November 3rd, we visit the sacristy. The sacristy has been cleaned of the dust accumulated during the fire. A patina is now being applied to harmonize the color of the vaults. The murals in the chapter house have also been restored. Next, the restoration of the sacristy continues with that of its carpentry furniture. This makes a good transition to the date of November 8, when the carpenters take to the stage. Indeed, it should not be forgotten that among the furnishings designed for the celebration of Catholic worship, there is an element of carpentry. So, for the past few weeks, all these carpentry pieces have been cleaned in a 3-stage process. First, a sanitary inspection of the parts. Next, dust and worn wax are removed. Finally, the carpenters apply a new coat of wax to protect the wood. Wood carvers are also on hand to repair any gaps, as well as to replace carving elements that have disappeared over time or been damaged by the fall of small vault elements that collapsed during the fire. We now turn our attention to the two main restorations carried out on the facades this autumn. Firstly, the 2nd of October saw the final completion of the repositioning of all the high windows. Having been removed from the cathedral in the days following the fire and restored in a workshop 4 years ago, the master glassworkers have been installing them for several months now. They begin by replacing the fittings, then the glass panels they support. Once the panels are in place, the master glaziers stabilize them with wedges, which are a kind of dowel. Next, they reinforce them with verguetes, which are thin horizontal bars held in place with lead ties. These are rolled over to prevent them from protruding over the motifs. So it was that on October 19th, the axial stained glass window depicting Christ crowning the Virgin was the last to be installed. Located at the far end, it will welcome visitors on December 8th of 1024. In second place, throughout the autumn, we find the stonemasons and sculptors. Their role is to reproduce gargoyles, chimeras, and other ornaments that are too damaged in new identical stone. Indeed, some of these decorative elements, too fragile to be kept in place, had been removed just after the fire. As a result, they now work in the boxes allocated to them at the foot of Notre-Dame. Depending on their condition, the ornaments can be completely resculpted. As a result, the original statues are copied, and the architects are given the complements they need to restore them to their original state. So, at the end of September, on the south arm of the transept, the stonemasons were back at work resting the gargoyles and chimeras that had been copied by the sculptors. The chimera, for example, simply had to be carved out of a missing protruding element, such as the head, and reinserted into the original sculpture by means of a rod. October sees the return of the gables, revealing their newly carved stones. It's worth noting that the journeymen also carved the stones that make up the north and south gables within the cathedral itself, restoring their plant-like ornamentation. Now we come to the part that best reveals the extent to which the construction site has been in full swing over the last 3 months. You'll see by the end that the contrast between early September and late November is not insignificant. In fact, the 5th of September marked the start of the erection of the nef framework, which is none other than the second major section of the Grand Comble. Consequently, for the carpenters, this date marked the culmination of a long and complex preparation phase that began several months ago alongside the foresters to select the trees, then in the workshop to cut and assemble the timbers, then on the assembly platforms on the banks of the Seine, and finally on September 5th at the top of the walls of Notre-Dame. Thanks to the meticulous help of the crane operators, a strange broom was launched. Alongside the erection of the roof structure on October 5th, the spire was erected. Once the shaft had been erected, it was the turn of the open work floor to take over, enabling the spire to gradually reach for the sky. To do this, after cutting them in the workshop and rehearsing their assembly, the carpenters assembled the pieces of solid chainwood inside the scaffolding. In this way, the punch that forms the backbone of the structure has been laid. Then it's the turn of the arresting posts to form the outer framework. Finally, the carpenters assemble the numerous slotted pins that give the spire its solidity and take up all its forces. At the same time, 4 days later, the stonemasons completed the restoration of the built-up walls. These walls, which are above the level of the vaults, support the roof structure. So, to ensure a solid foundation for the future framework, the stones of the walls damaged by the fire are restored, while the less damaged ones simply undergo regrading to make the stones smooth again. On the other hand, all the stones making up the race of walls were replaced by new ones, as these are the most fragile. Once the stones have been laid, notches are cut to accommodate iron staples. These are then sealed with lead, which is poured into the notches. This metal chaining is one of the many assets of Notre-Dame de Paris. Now, on October 16th, a symbolic event is taking place, marking yet another step towards the end of the project, the shortening of the crane. Since December 2019, this 80-meter crane has towered over the entire restoration site. As a result, the crane's arm has been shortened to avoid colliding with the spire as it continues its ascent. As you can see, the rebuilding of the roof structure is also slowly but surely drawing to a close. On this October 25th, the carpenters are continuing to assemble the chain link spans one by one, gradually covering the entire building. It's not long before they cover the entire nave, finally joining the spire stump to the bend in the west facade. The same applies to the choir. As for the interior, we can almost imagine it completely finished. It's a reminder of the ancient forest, reborn thanks to the collective effort of all its workers. Finally, on November 21st, we discover that the first wooden decorations for the spire have been installed. The trilobes, quatrefoils and colonnettes were all carved and assembled in the workshops. The two openwork levels of the spire are now complete. At the end of November, the spire's scaffolding rose from 50 to 70 meters in height. This progression of the scaffolding was a strong sign that the carpenters would soon be tackling the assembly of the spire. And indeed, it was on November 29th that some of the last elements of the spire's framework were laid at a height of 86 meters. The scaffolding will now continue to rise to a height of 96 meters before being gradually removed, allowing the spire to be revealed for all to see. So, with a year to go to the inauguration, are we on target to meet our objectives? Before answering this question, it should be noted that it is now certain that the work will extend beyond December 8, 2004. So the question is no longer whether we'll be able to meet the objectives announced for December 2009, but rather whether we'll be able to reopen Notre-Dame to the public by December 2024. If so, the answer is most certainly yes.